Australia and Fiji have had shaky relations for the past decade. The latest gestures by Australia over Fiji indicate Canberra may be rethinking its strategy in the Pacific amid rising Chinese influence. At the end of April, Australian Foreign Minister Bob Carr paid the first high-level Australian visit to Fiji in 4 years. Relations between the two countries have been strained following the 2000 coup, and particularly following another coup in Fiji in 2006 and Australia's moves to sanction Fiji and suspend the country from participation in regional forums in 2009. Following his visit, Carr praised Fiji for its positive progress on the path back to democracy and indicated Canberra would consider exemptions of current sanctions and allowing Fiji back into some of the regional forums. Canberra's shunning of Fiji in recent years has not only failed to significantly alter Fiji's political path, but it has also strengthened unity amongst the Melanesian states and weakened Australia's influence through the region, opening the way for China to expand its reach into Australia's neighborhood. Fiji is one of the Melanesian nations, a sub-region of Oceania normally defined by its ethnicity and geography. In the 1980s, the Melanesian states, including Fiji, Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands, and Papua New Guinea, formed the Melanesian Spearhead Group, a loose association at the time that was not formalized until 2007. In that same year, after tensions between Australia and Fiji expanded, the Chinese donated a new secretariat building for the group in Vanuatu. China has also expanded its economic and political ties through the Melanesian chain in recent years, in part to manage the Australia-Japan-U.S. strategic triangle. This expansion of Chinese influence and the increased coordination amongst the Melanesian states led to a decrease in Canberra's ability to shape and influence the region. For Australia, the Melanesian states, along with Indonesia, represent an arc of strategic interest, a wall between Australia and the rest of East Asia and the Pacific. One of Australia's strategic imperatives is to ensure that no outside power is able to exploit this region and thus pose a potential threat to the Australian continent. In order to keep competitors from gaining a foothold, Canberra has long taken the role of ensuring and maintaining stability in its smaller island neighbors. Without the perception of a strategic threat, Australia has in recent years followed a more moral foreign policy among the Melanesian states, pressing for democracy at the expense of its own relations. But with the perceived rising influence of China, Canberra is now rethinking this policy and beginning to re-engage. The Australian move parallels a U.S. move in the region, seen in Washington's new ties with Myanmar, as well as expanding relations with Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. For Canberra, its strategy on Fiji in the past few years has proved to undermine its influence among the Pacific nations, and also weakened its credibility as a significant regional partner for the United States in the Pacific and Asia. The shift in Canberra's approach to Fiji, then, reflects the growing recognition of challenges to Australia's strategic interests in the region, including its long-term relationship with the United States. The new party chief of Chongqing, Zhang Daijiang, has called on the city to study and learn from the so-called Zhejiang experience, an economic model from the coastal province where he formerly served that emphasizes the role of the private sector in the local economy. The comment is an apparent shift in direction from the centralized government investment-led model of ousted party secretary Bo Xilai. It suggests that Chongqing is once again about to play the role of a testing ground for competing Chinese economic policies. The Chinese government has long struggled with finding the right balance between centralized economic control and the role of private industry in managing the nation's economic growth. Though there's little disagreement amongst policymakers as to the ultimate goal, a strong and stable China, there remain substantial differences regarding the best path to achieve that goal. The famous black cat, white cat quote attributed to Deng Xiaoping, which allowed for greater focus on outcomes than methods, has retained its usefulness amongst Chinese leaders as they experiment with different and at times even competing economic models. The Zhejiang experience stems from coastal China, where the role of private industry was seen as a critical element for China's rapid economic growth. The Chongqing model, at least under Bo, reflected a new left economic model, one where the state played the strongest role and economic growth and activity was driven by large-scale investment projects and state enterprises. In many ways, it also reflected a more inland economic model where the lack of foreign trade opportunities led to strengthened state firms and the squeezing out of small and medium enterprises and private firms. By calling for the Zhejiang experience to be repeated in Chongqing, Zhang is reflecting the guidance of the central government in Beijing, which has been looking for new ways to spur the domestic economy. Massive government investment-led growth, particularly in the aftermath of the global economic slowdown, has served as a stopgap measure to maintain economic and social stability, but officials do not see it as a viable long-term solution. Rather, they're looking for a way to stir domestic consumption and counter the declining role of exports in the overall Chinese economy. Urbanization of inland areas has been one major initiative, but has proven insufficient thus far. By exporting the coastal Zhejiang model of a stronger role for private rather than state-run industry into the interior, Beijing hopes to find new ways to stimulate domestic consumption and decrease China's vulnerability to external economic factors. Chongqing, given its size and location, has served as a useful testing ground for economic and political management initiatives. The reversal of the city's economic direction suggests this pattern is about to be repeated. Although Beijing has made it a point to separate the case of Beaujolais' corruption from the overall policies of the New Left economics, his removal and the promotion of a new economic model in Chongqing show the pendulum of Chinese economic policy direction may be swinging once again.